We set up FanCode to build this sports fans platform. Overarching goal was we want to build a platform or a product for sports fans by sports fans. The premise is the fan. That is where it starts and that's where it ends.
When you go and meet entrepreneurs or franchise owners, broadcasters, that's the only word everybody wants to talk about. Where exactly is that space right now? How well has India's fandom in sport arrived?
The premise of everything that we talk, the sports industry, which we are fortunate enough to be a part of, the premise is the fan. We are very clear that the fan had to be at the center of everything we did.
Do you think that's an element that Indian sport has still not caught on to, where the idea of using the sport as a catalyst to probably build other engagements around it?
What we are seeing today is the outcome of a vision made 20 years ago. It's not something that we say, hey, now let's create this great product and it's going to happen in 2 years. We have to think saying that this is one piece of something we want to get to 10 years from now.
Fan wars are only about trolling, only about abuse, only about, kind of who's bigger than who. How important they are. Is this a natural phenomenon that you cannot stop and you shouldn't tinker around with?
Fandom comes with it affiliation, right? So there's a level of tribalism, right? My team, my player. It's always been going on, and I think it's a very, very important part of the sport is showing their affiliation, right? Their passion for it and bonding with people who have that shared passion. I don't think it's a issue of sports fandom. I think the platforms that sometimes promote this level need to also have some responsibility.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bombay Sport Exchange. This is K. Srinivas Rao, and our guest this week is Mr. Yannick Colaco, co-founder at FanCode. Thank you for taking the time out, Yannick.
Thank you for having me.
I should say this before the conversation begins that this is a very formal setting, but otherwise I've tracked your career for so long. I mean, since the days of Nimbus, when cricket broadcast in India was first changing, to your stint at the NBA, and then, of course, as founder of the startup. So I'm sure there is a lot to kind of, talk to you about. But before I get anywhere close, I'll start with FanCode. What's on the buffet? I believe French Open is the latest property that you'll have. What is happening?
Yeah, we set up FanCode to build this sports fans platform, right? Where the overarching goal was we want to build a platform or a product for sports fans by sports fans. And that was really like, we want people who are passionate about building great experiences for sports fans. So that's really when FanCode was set up 6 years ago, right? And I think initially we started with saying that let's figure out how do we bring all this great global and local sports content, it doesn't have great coverage, to sports fans across the country. And use the power of digital, not just to be able to get them to access all of this easily, but also to be able to have great experiences in watching. So we are a sports tech platform, and we've kind of built FanCode up, over the last 6 years. We now we've had over 180 million users on our platform. We cover 14 sports, close to 20,000 live games in a year. We obviously do a lot of cricket, women's cricket, domestic cricket, a lot of global international cricket also. We've gone really deep into football. We've done a lot of football events in the past, and we also now have a long-term partnership with La Liga, which is one of the biggest sports football leagues in the world. We do golf, USPGA golf. We do motorsport, which is Formula One, MotoGP. And as you were saying, right now, this is our first foray into tennis as a partnership with Sony, where we are showing Roland Garros, the French Open live to sports fans across the country.
The name FanCode and the very word fan these days, in the sports industry, when you go and meet entrepreneurs or franchise owners, broadcasters, that's the only word everybody wants to talk about. How do you engage? And I believe at the core somewhere, you all must have started off thinking, how to engage with the fans. So I'm asking you, where exactly is that space right now? How well has India's fandom in sport arrived? And I ask you this for a very specific purpose, because over the years, as I've tracked sport, for me, the idea of fandom in India has been so celebrity-driven. If I see you on the television, and if you're somebody on the television, then I want your autograph. outside of, wherever I meet you, and then I don't know, sometimes I don't even care who you are. As long as I've seen you on television, you may mean someone, like kind of. So does that space still exist, or you've seen it evolve?
As you rightly said, the premise of everything that we talk, the sports industry, which we are fortunate enough to be a part of, the premise is the fan. Right? That is where it starts and that's where it ends. So when we were building this platform, which was for sports, we were very clear that the fan had to be at the center of everything we did. And then what are the other two things, right? We wanted, we were tech, digital first, so a sports tech company. And we wanted to lean into the other thing which all fans have, which is community. Right? You want the camaraderie a part of it. So the ubiquitous concept of, the bro code, the ubiquitous concept of code as technology, that's how we really came up with the FanCode name. And I actually think when you talk about fandom, it's grown so significantly in this country over the last 15 years, I think especially among young audiences, and to the point where you make that celebrity or just stars, right? Stars and star athletes drive a lot of fandom. That's been true for sports forever. And if you actually think about it, football in Brazil was driven by Socrates, Pele. That it was these stars who came out of nowhere, the stories around them, which they expressed in the form of a team game. They played for their country and stuff. The same thing in India with Kapil Dev, Sunil Gavaskar, Mohun Ramannath, Sachin Tendulkar. So I think stars and heroes are a very, very important part of fandom. But I think there is one aspect of it which says that people are only chasing celebrities and stuff. I think that's a part where you get engaged into, and then you become part of the entire experience. So I do think celebrities or stars are an important part of fandom, but I don't think it ends there.
We talk about fans, and I've always also believed that you will see what's happening anywhere in the world of sports, anywhere across the globe. Just see what happened in America 5 years ago, or probably just see what's happening in America today, and then probably, you can put a finger on what's going to probably happen in India 5 years down the line. If I'm coming from there, then I must take this opportunity to ask you that you've done a stint with the NBA.
Yeah.
You did a stint in NBA at a time when club sport in India, modern day club sport in cricket at least, was still evolving.
Yeah.
Do you see a cross connect? Do you see a pattern to what you saw in America with the NBA, and how fandom and club fandom particularly is evolving in India? I see a Joe Rogan show today,
Yeah.
and I noticed that it's important for him to discuss Virat Kohli and his Instagram followers, right?
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of, I don't know who the guest was, but I remember watching, one episode where he is discussing, he's comparing Virat Kohli's Instagram followers to LeBron James' Instagram followers. And I mean, 5 years ago, I don't think that was even a conceivable idea, right? So where are we heading in that line of thought? And again, drawing from your understanding of that space.
You made a great point to begin with, right? Saying that you looked at what happened in the West and that maybe 5 years later it happened in India. And that's true, or that was true. I think now that gap is in days, weeks, months. And I think also there's the opposite, where innovation is happening in India and actually going west and east. So I think that obviously the power of digital and power of the entire ecosystem which is building in India has actually been where we are not just followers, we are also we're thought starters. When I talk to a lot of my old colleagues in the NBA and a lot of people in the media business, they are completely blown away by this entire concept of sachet pricing that we introduced. Right? No one in the US ever thought about it. For them, a subscriber was someone you locked in. Right? They were like, oh, I need that person locking in for a year, for a month. The concept that we would be selling, saying, buy only a match. And I would always get this feedback saying, oh, but what if they leave? I said, they leave, that means my product sucks. Right? So if you don't have faith in your own product, then there's a larger issue. And I think, so there's a lot of innovation which is coming out of India going west. I think brands, from what I learned when I was working in the NBA, and I had the privilege of working with two commissioners, David Stern, before he retired, and Adam Silver. I just think one of the things that really stands out is their ability to look 5 years, 10 years out, right? And the ability to actually be able to say that this is my 10-year plan, this is my 5-year plan, rather than saying what's happening this week, next week. So the ability to think, the ability to present, the ability to drive strategy, which is 5 years, 10 years down, is something which is phenomenal and something that all of us should learn from, because in today's day and age of instant gratification, you sometimes lose the forest for the trees, right? And I think that's why the NBA today is if you look at tons of innovation around sports, right? The NBA is right up there in terms of things they're trying out, in terms of, because they're basically saying, what do I do for next 3 years, next set of
and
fans?
the globalization.
And globalization. I mean, first time I met David Stern, which is what now, 12 years ago, when he was the commissioner, he was just so focused on saying that for him, taking the NBA and basketball across the world was not just, it wasn't business. Business is important. It's almost like a life mission, right? And it's in how do I actually make an impact in India and a whole lot of places through the game of basketball, through the NBA.
I had never seen an NBA game actually until 2 years ago when I saw a season opener in Abu Dhabi. And so Luka Doncic was in action. And now here's what's going on in my mind, right? I am watching a proper American league in the heart of the desert, right? And there is this East European superstar who's made it big in America. I'm an Indian journalist sitting and watching it. Right in front of me is a Chinese social media influencer who's recording something for TikTok. And in that moment, I was beginning to think, does sport get more global than what I'm watching right now? And from what I saw, in that moment, that realization that dawned upon me and the product that I saw in front of me, I was in absolute awe of what I had just witnessed. And the one memory that I walked away with is that match was not necessarily about basketball. It was about so many things surrounding basketball. Their ability to keep the fan in the stadium engaged for those many hours, whereas the game is only that much, right? The amount of action on the field, the amount of celebrities out there. I'm seeing Ronaldo Nazario on the court there with Abdul Karim Jabbar. I mean, fascinating. Do you think that's an element that Indian sport has still not caught on to, where the idea of using the sport as a catalyst to probably build other engagements around it?
What we are seeing today is the outcome of a vision made 20 years ago. Right? This is not something which happened overnight. I remember David Stern used to tell this story. When he first distributed the NBA in China, he used to send tapes to CCTV and they used to show it for free. Right? And this was in the 90s or whatever. Even though, so this is almost like a vision saying that, hey, I know I have to do this to get to 20 years from now. So that's just an example. But there's so many things that they've done, right? In a sense, to be able to, and I think that answers also the second piece of your question, in a sense that is this something we should get to? Absolutely, but it's going to take 10 years, it's going to take 15 years. It's not something that we say, hey, now let's create this great product and it's going to happen in 2 years. We have to think saying that this is one piece of something we want to get to 10 years from now.
You made a point that again reminded me of something you said, David Stern using tapes, kind of to send it free, and I had the opportunity to interview Adam Silver when I was in Abu Dhabi. And I asked him about, is there a conscious effort to kind of put those clips out on YouTube? It's everywhere. On my feed on YouTube, NBA is always around the corner. And I have gotten hooked onto these arguments about, again, I mean, it started off with who's bigger, LeBron James or Michael Jordan, and then, spilling it down to kind of, I did not understand how big a star Steph Curry was. It gradually later dawned upon me. And a great element and a great part of that was thanks to YouTube. And I asked Adam Silver, I said, is that a conscious effort to do what? Is it to kind of monetize? And said, no, this is not even, we're not even looking at monetization at all on this front. This is only to allow to market the NBA. It's something similar to what you said, right? Sending tapes, right?
Yeah, it again, right? This is a mindset, right? And there are lots of federations I know in the past and who you also dealt with, right? Global federations who were very, very protective about their content. right? And I think the NBA was very progressive in the sense, which almost, again, this is like 10, 15 years ago, where they started allowing players to communicate openly. They started giving up their content because they wanted to create cultural impact, right, to increase their fan base. Now, whether that's a right decision on a business, wrong decision, that is debatable. But the clarity of vision was there. And I also think, in a sense, a lot of the stuff that other sports, look at what Formula One, what Liberty Media has done with Formula One. Who would have thought that any sports federation of that would allow a film crew into their, into their, what pit lane, into like give that level of access? Someone in Liberty Media thought it was a great idea, and that has obviously had a significant impact. Again, that idea was 8 years ago. 4 years later, it impacted when the show went out. So I think with a lot of stuff, I find in sports and in media that a lot of things which have the highest impact take time. It takes time, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of perseverance, right? You have to have like that belief that, I've got to keep working on it, keep improving it. And that's something that I think is a great lesson, has been a great lesson for me.
How big you think are today's fan wars? You know, and let me get straight to the point. How big are today's fan wars in terms of the kind of course, not just the engagement part, but about kind of on X, fan wars are only about trolling, only about abuse, only about kind of who's bigger than who. How healthy, of course, is one of the things that I want to understand. How important they are, and again, is this a natural phenomenon that you cannot stop and you shouldn't tinker around with?
Fandom comes with it affiliation, right? So there's a level of tribalism, right? My team, my player. So that creates great camaraderie and community, right? If we both are MI fans, if we meet for the first time and we know that we're MI fans, we'll have something to talk about. We're passionate about it, we'll argue about players, but we both know we are MI fans. So there's a relationship that builds. And obviously, if there's someone else who comes across who's another team's fan which we don't like, there's also a discussion, but that relationship is also set. So there's healthy kind of rivalries and stuff. So this has been going on for years, right? Whether it's Manchester United and Liverpool, whether it's the Lakers and the Boston Celtics, whether it's East Bengal and Mohun Bagan.
Oh yes.
Whether it is obviously MI and Delhi, maybe, because it's always been going on. And I think it's a very, very important part of the sport is fans basically showing their affiliation, right, their passion for it, and bonding with people who have that shared passion. I think the issue you're talking about has nothing to do with fandom. It's the platform. There are certain social media platforms which essentially have become basically they incentivize extremist views, and essentially they amplify whoever shouts the loudest. So I think it's not a sports issue. I just think it's generally, it happens in everything, right? In politics, in food, in everything. It happens in everything. So I don't think it's a issue of sports fandom. I think the platforms that sometimes promote this level need to also have some responsibility in terms of language. You have a big Twitter account, right? I'm sure you get a lot of love and hate regularly on your. And it's just like it's so funny. I always say, right, when people talk on X or Twitter or whatever it is, and the same people, if you would meet in person and have a conversation with, I'm like 99.9% sure they will not have the same level of animosity or the same level of whatever on you. So I just think that it's a platform issue, and with all the great things that social media has done, I think this is a really, really, it's a big problem, right?
People also kind of get awed by it. And I'll tell you an example. Like there is this, I don't remember their names, but there are these two guys on Pakistani YouTube, cricket, right? They are like kind of, you find them coming and like talking about cricketers, etc. And, they tend to give their opinions. And first of all, they feel free. They feel it's like absolutely okay to abuse on the show. And then they kind of have extremely one-sided and confirmed views and opinions. So there are two kinds of people who they are attracting. One who like just don't want to go there. They're like, this is wild and I don't want it. And the other half is like, okay, this is exactly I want. Yeah. They've kind of carved a line. I'm saying that in sport, why must we use? In sport, have we probably reached an era, or are we operating in an era where being a fly on the wall is not enough anymore? You got to take a side.
Yeah.
If I'm there out there on X, I could have said that, you know what? Yeah, I mean, Rohit and Virat, both are good enough to continue playing for Test cricket. Have I now reached a stage where I have to say, no, who do I prefer between the two of them? Something on those lines.
Yeah, so but again, again, the platform incentivizes you to take a stand. If you were to say, right, which is what any, I think, reasonable cricket fan would say, hey, this is where Rohit's really good, this is where Virat's really good. I think, Rohit could be doing this better, Virat could be doing this better. You will get no views. You will get no amplification. It's true. Like, so that it's almost, the extremes are amplified. The rational discussion. I mean, I've had, I'm sure you have also, tons of social gatherings where people have great discussions on a thing like this, right? There is no, abuse or trolling in that. So, but on some of these social media platforms, you are incentivized to take an extreme position because that's what gets you clicks.
We're talking about all this madness, and it just occurs to me that, you come from Goa, and your father was a very senior sports administrator, and kind of the world that I see you coming from and knowing him, like where he's coming from, sport was almost a very different world than the world that we see today around us, right? When you sit, I'm sure you sit with him and kind of look at his view of how things were at one point. What are the conclusions? Like, where has this gone? I mean, like, kind of, was this a natural progression, or the influx of the industry into sport and the whole rush to kind of make this a monetizing umbrella is what is leading to this whole madness? Because sport was always there. People still played cricket. People still were simple enough to take a ball on the beach and kick it around, right? Yeah. So what do you make of the modern day phenomenon?
The bigger the spotlight, the more you get of a lot of this attention, right? You get good, bad attention, but it's basically come to spotlight. And I think there is, like, and it's really interesting, as you said, my dad's old school, right? He's come from watching, like, very purist in terms of sport. He loves Test cricket, he loves obviously football, but even him, right? He is very, very rational or logical in saying that if the money that has come into the sport, especially of cricket, in the last few years hadn't come, the sport wouldn't have grown the way it is. So I don't think that anyone can be naive enough to say that, hey, we would like to go the sport, but we don't want money coming into it, right? I think with money comes attention and the spotlight, and it does create a lot of these issues. I just think that that's where you have, a sports ecosystem, and each person in that sports ecosystem has a responsibility and plays a role. The federation, for example, their job is to protect and grow the sport. So they are almost the arbiters, right, of saying that here's the amount of money I get, here's the amount of, here's what I need to do for the sport, here's how I need to allocate it. So I just think that it balances out. I actually think that the sports ecosystem will benefit from more attention, especially sports outside of cricket, right? Will benefit from more attention, benefit from more stars coming out. I think that's a good thing.
Which is what we're seeing in chess right now.
One
of the things I'm just seeing the volumes that chess is generating across social media.
I have this question for you. Like, I always think about this as sports fans, right? And when you think about sports fans,
I've always found that there is a difference between a nationalist fan and a sports fan. And I'll give you an example. When Neeraj Chopra was throwing a javelin in the Olympics, my WhatsApp groups, which I have with people who never watch sport, friends of mine, family, whole bunch, housing society groups, like everyone talking about the angle of his elbow, of, oh, he should have done this. And that's great, right? Everyone was really into it. People were researching, people had an opinion, discussions. Done. 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, he was throwing at one of those Grand Prix, right, of this thing.
Yeah.
Zero chatter. So I think it's important to understand that there are a lot of fans who support or who are interested in a sports person when they represent the country, because there's almost an offshoot or there's almost a rub-off of success there, right? I would love that to be across everything in that sport. So I would love the same amount of people to be following javelin throwing throughout the year. I would love the same amount of people to be following shooting like they did when Manu Baka won a bronze throughout the year. Because that's actual fandom. Like, think about it today, right? The avid cricket fan watched the IPL finals yesterday and then came on FanCode and watched West Indies versus England. Right? The avid cricket fan today is not stop watching cricket because the IPL is over, or not stop watching cricket because India is not playing. They will still watch a ton of other cricket events on FanCode. The average football fan will not only watch when India is playing Thailand today in football, but they'll also watch AFC champion qualifiers. That's the avid sports fan. But I think that distinction, and because you brought the chess example, right?
Yeah.
This only happens when some Indian is doing well in chess. What about the rest? Are these actually chess fans, or are these actually fans of an Indian doing well in a sport?
What you're also saying also has a connotation here that if India wasn't, a leading team in cricket internationally, would IPL have the same?
I listen. I think the thing
or
about
I'd say football is a better comparison. Yes. Like, does India need to do better at the international level for, let's say, a tournament like ISL to kind of further find a kick?
It definitely helps, but I think fandom can be. I'm thinking about football in Japan, right? Japan is not one of the top 40 countries in the world, but football is extremely popular. So I think it helps. It helps create more interest. But the fandom eventually, that what you're talking about, tribal, those avid fans, comes out from an intrinsic interest in the sport. And honestly, that avid fan just, and that's honestly what we build a platform for, right? We want the avid fan to be here throughout the year, not just on the one-off spike events. So that's really what.
Since you work in an industry which caters to fans, these filters are way too many right now, like, nationalists that you mentioned, then club fans. I'm sure there are people who come into sport because they're fascinated by the tech that sport brings to the table. I'm sure there are others who are fascinated by, let's say, celebrity dump, so these filters are growing, and the volumes, because in a country like India, the volumes are massive.
I just think that fandom, especially among young people in this country, is just growing significantly across the board. Whether it's in motorsport, whether it's in football, and not just like our football viewership. When we show, we showed the El Clásico a few weeks back, and the viewership was primarily driven by young audiences. The stickiness of those audiences, but they were watching like 80% of the game, right? 75-80%, which is phenomenal in consumption of viewing for an average. So I just think that sports fandom in this country is really growing. I think there's also been a cultural change, right? When I was growing up, I was fortunate enough that my parents loved sport, so they, encouraged me to play sport. But I know tons of friends of mine who grew up with me who were basically after 8th standard, 9th standard forget sport. Now, it's changed a lot now. Right. We have friends who are, sending their kids to learn sport. Right. It's become a part of culture, right? It's become part of saying that learning a sport, you don't have to learn a sport to be a champion, but it's important part of your education. And that will change 20 years from now. All these kids who have learned to play football, learned to play paddle, learned to play tennis, they will be viewers. Right. And the US had done a survey years back where basically said that if you played a sport before you were 14, you are 6 times more likely to follow it as a young adult because you appreciate the sport, you appreciate what goes into it. So this phenomenon, these young audiences, we're already seeing it. 8 to 10 years from now is essentially going to explode in terms of, especially sports, in addition to cricket. Cricket's not going to grow smaller, it's going to continue growing. But in addition to that.
You're talking about playing sport.
The people who've learned to play, the kids, are essentially going to be consumers and followers of it as they go. They may not necessarily play it, but they will be consumers and followers of it. Because they played it, they have an appreciation for it.
Another trend that I see with most sports leagues in India today, and as you know, sports leagues keep sprouting by the dozen. Every second week there's a new league coming on some sport. Now, most of the times, what I have noticed is that there is a certain tendency to kind of look at television numbers when you are building a revenue model around a sport, right? I don't think I have seen enough effort where anybody is trying to build something organically. Now, in this very conversation, a little some time ago, you mentioned that there needs to be some kind of an organic presence, right? You kind of need to continue with it, and you need to have the patience. You said nothing gets built overnight, right?
Yeah.
You need to spend time. Are we looking at it in the right direction? Are we looking at it the right way? Where I think we are living in the world of instant results. And I think the most notorious aspect here is the sprouting of new sports leagues, which really don't have a head or tail in terms of how they should pursue it long term.
I think that's the operative keyword, long term. Right? Everyone tries to sell franchises for a fortune in year one. Everyone tries to sell big sponsorship. I genuinely think, like, even, I mean, I'm saying this because I was involved also in the first hockey league which ever happened here, and we've had many opportunities to do it. There is a base of hockey fans in this country. When you're building a product like a hockey league, the first thing I would do is saying, how do I make sure every one of those people become advocates? They love the product first. But the opposite happens. People say, oh, I want massive distribution because I want 100 million people to watch it. That ain't going to happen. I mean, you have to start, as you were saying, you have to start from a foundation. Build and this is with any product, you first have your early adopters. They are your biggest advocates. Same thing with leagues. You have to build your early adopters, make them advocates, and then year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, that's when you have to start growing. And it's not rocket science. Like it's in any product that you build in market, right? In business, you always start small and then build layers on. And I think that's where not everyone has got it wrong, right? I'm sure a lot of people have done it differently.
In recent times, the one example that I keep citing all the time is the Major Cricket League.
Yeah.
And when Major Cricket League in America was being planned, I remember having these conversations with people saying, oh God, here comes another league that they're going to play matches early morning in America so that, they can cater to Indian prime time sometime in the evening. And I must say that I was pleasantly surprised when Major Cricket League actually kind of came up and said, we are not interested in the subcontinent prime time. We are not interested in the subcontinent viewership. We will play at prime time in America, and no matter how low down the order cricket is in terms of priorities, we'll work at organically building the sport. And that's a 10, 15-year roadmap that they have tried to carve for themselves. And that's something that I think is people should draw a parallel from.
When I was talking about non-cricket leagues also in India, but I think in cricket leagues, there are lots of examples. Look at the Caribbean Premier League, right? I mean, we are partners for them, and we obviously complain there's not enough of primetime India games, but they are doing the right thing. They're basically playing for trying to pack up audiences, get people in there, build your local base, right? That's where the business should be built off. The same thing with the Big Bash, right? That's how they're kind of building up, build your local foundation and then build up from there. And I think that's the right way.
It's around more than 20 years ago that you stepped into cricket broadcast. Which was the year when you kind of made your first foray?
So I initially in 2003, I spent close to 2 years in South Africa. 2002, 2003, we were setting up the commercial rights office for the ICC, because the ICC's rights were then run by Global Cricket Corporation, which Nimbus owned part of. So I spent time there, and then when I came back in 2004, that was when 2005, 2006, when we first got into media rights, where Harish led that when we took the first BCCI contract, right, which was, I still remember, $612 million.
I was talking to Harish Sawani very recently, and I said I was part of that press conference.
Oh, are you?
I was part of that press conference. He and Lalit Modi were addressing it. $612 million. That amount was announced, and I remember gasps and people being in awe, like, whoa, what is this? $612 million for Indian cricket rights. I think today's viewers would not really have an idea of what Nimbus was up to. I told Harish to kind of, talk more about it so that people understand where the origins were of this big money coming in. But again, yes, Harish took that big bet. Nimbus took that big bet. It changed the idea of broadcast in India, cricket broadcast in India, in so many ways. But I think the more important thing about Nimbus that needs to be spoken about is the production of cricket in India. And I'll come to why I'm, asking this. But again, the primary thing being, India didn't have any experience or understanding of production of cricket, right? It was always these companies from the UK and Australia
Sunset and Wines,
who would come and do it, right? So what encouraged you all at that time in Nimbus to kind of take this step and send our people, and what did you all do? Can you kind of throw some light on it?
Yeah, Harish is one of the smartest people in sport I've ever met, right? And you also spent a lot of time with him. Again, I think one of the abilities, and I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of people like this, his ability to see things 2 steps ahead, 3 steps ahead is phenomenal. He's a really creative person. So, in 2006, so he had also done some level of customized production around, I think, the 99 World Cup, where they were doing some stuff for DD, but it was not the world field production. So in 2006, when we acquired the rights, the BCCI wanted to appoint a host broadcaster, like a world feed producer. And as usual, it was, as you said, there was a number of European companies, Australian companies who were bidding for it. And one of the things I remember when we were putting together this budget and say, hey, we should bid for this and stuff. And we had a EP at that time, executive producer, put this entire line item thing together. And we were just looking at that. And one of the things Harish said then, when we were looking at the crew that he had kind of put together, he said 95% of the crew that we want for each of these events is a foreigner, is not from India. There's like 5% of your crew. And there are two, and in his mind, I remember that time, there were two things about it. One was obviously, it's costing us so much, and it's going to increase our costs significantly. You have to fly them in, you pay the... Yeah. And then the second is, he's like, we are one of the number one cricket nations, even at that time, right, in terms of contribution of revenues, in terms of sponsors, numbers. And to say that we can't produce something like this is a shame. So that first production bid that we put in, he basically, I remember saying that he's like, by the time we are done with this, we're going to flip that, right? We're going to get 95% Indian, and it was a 4-year kind of contract, and 5% like some experts from abroad. We did it in 1 year. In 1 year, we actually flipped the entire thing. And people underestimate the talent development is a phenomenally hard task. The 2 or 3 things that he constantly focused on, right? The challenge for Indians to this thing was not talent. One was training. And second, it was almost gig work, right? In a sense, which a lot of Europeans were okay with, where they come do a project, go up, they're off for 2 months, right? They do a project, off for 2 months. And Indians were not okay with that at that time, the cameraman and stuff. So he basically said, we have all these events we're having, let's give them guaranteed contracts. So he put together a list of people who had expertise and who could be trained up, and he gave them guaranteed 4-year contracts. And in the 4 years, a lot of them were saying, but we have also TV shows to do this and this. This is fine. As long as there's no cricket happening, you do whatever you want. If you don't have anything, I'm still paying you money. That changed the entire way everyone looked. Because by the time the first year got over, literally 90 to 95% of the crew were Indians. And the quality was as good. There was more creativity. There was more innovation. A lot of people today who are senior producers came from that batch.
I still meet cameramen today. I still meet people on the ground today who work with BCCI, who work with so many other production teams in cricket, who thank Harish and who thank Nimbus and those years for giving them that freedom to experiment.
And, if you think about it, it just needed, in hindsight, it sounds simple, but at that point of time,
of course,
years and years.
Harish makes it sound simple. I said, Harish, how did you do it? He's like, I would send them, go secretly learn and come.
But he has that ability to. I even remember we were doing this, and again,
for me, I was 24, 25 at that time. So all this stuff was like, some of these things were, very difficult for me to understand immediately. I remember we were looking at budgets, right? And one of the things at that time was you had to move. We had these flyaway kits, right? To move from venue to venue, and India International was all over the place. And we were all going to the same vendor who was chartering these planes, right? All of you were talking to the same vendor, our competition talking to the same vendor. And we were looking at the numbers, and then at some point we were finalizing the budget. We said, they have a really good relationship with our competitor, so we're not going to get a better deal than what they are getting. So Hari said, what if we buy the plane? Right? I mean, like, why don't we go to them and say, we'll buy the plane from you? And we never did, because they eventually gave us a much better deal than what. But just the concept of being able to say we need to break how things are done, we need to shake that up to be able to get what we want. And I think he's in everything, in terms of content creation, in terms of, in 2006, he had this vision of building the world's first global cricket channel, which is what he was setting up in the days of linear, right? There was no digital at that time. Obviously, everything didn't work the way it did, but that was in 2006 when he was setting up. His vision was very clear. I want to build the world's first
one channel that will show cricket everywhere
in the world.
Oh my God.
Through linear distribution, and that was before, like, 2006. Right? There's no digital streaming at that time.
So yeah, really, really, really smart.
Wow.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this I didn't know. This is like,
should ask him about it.
It's
one of the things he was very, very passionate about. His rounds of funding, his deck was actually that, saying that this is what I'm going to build.
I actually lost a bet with him in the run-up to the IPL media rights auction. I met him at a party, and I was like, I said it'll go beyond 60,000, and he was like, no, it won't touch 50,000. It'll stop. It'll come to 50,000, but it'll stop before that. Like, okay. I was very kicked about, because at that time I still thought Amazon was participating, and I thought that package C in the IPL bidding was very cool, and I was really kicked. But again, I have to take him out for lunch. I've still not taken him out for lunch. That said, cricket broadcast in India is not the same anymore, right? For the longest time, it was about the broadcaster spending money to buy the property to rent the property, or whatever, for a 5-year window, etc. And kind of sell it or earn through advertising, or subscription. Right? That's the only way you earn. So you would buy the rights for 100 rupees and probably sell it and make a 5 rupee profit, sell it for 105. Today, the volumes that are being invested, in cricket rights, especially in India, is it just about cricket being the product anymore, or cricket has moved on from being the product to being a catalyst that is helping you sell a larger product? I need cricket and the numbers that cricket produces to maybe sell this on my website, sell a cup on my website, or sell this phone, or sell a pair of eyeglasses. So I'm just saying retail. I need cricket to kind of build my retail enterprise, or maybe in the case of Jio, sell SIM cards, sell data. Do you think that's the case? Even in America, Thursday night football, Amazon paid through their nose, right? Yeah. When they bought Thursday night football for it was a $10 billion deal. And it was, again, about telling the American audience what they need to do on Friday night and Saturday night, right? Wow. How do you see this phenomenon?
In the past, sport was, as you said, right? There were various forms of monetization. And sport was in the days of linear television being the dominant form of distribution. Sports was a driver to your bundle, right? So if you had 20 different channels, sport, because of the popularity that event had, helped you essentially, basically control a little bit of price, right? You could price things at a more premium level. And that was what ESPN did in the US, what a bunch of other companies did all across the world. I think today it's really interesting. So while that bundle has kind of been broken world over, I think the one thing that sports has, which is unique, is that sports has to be the most effective way of consuming sport is live. And today, in this very, very fragmented content ecosystem, right? Where people are watching stuff on YouTube, whatever, TikTok in the US, social media platforms and stuff. There are not many pieces of content which can determine or can draw a user to a platform at a given time. No one goes, I mean, not no one, very few people now go and watch 9 o'clock scheduled soap operas, right? Because think about us as consumers, right? You don't get up in the morning saying, oh, you know, my Netflix show has dropped today. I have to watch it at 9 o'clock. You can watch it whenever you want. You can watch 5 shows together. That's changed in the digital environment. Sports, that hasn't changed.
Appointment viewing?
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, the nature of sport and the nature of the experience changes once the game has happened. So today, if you are watching yesterday's game, right, RCB versus Punjab, while you're watching, the story is being written, right? So it's like it's real time. You don't know what's going to happen. Those last 3 balls, last over, 30 runs, you said, could be, who knows, right? Today, you won't watch that. No one's going to watch that last over because you know what happened. So the nature of that game has now changed to a video on demand product, which is competing with everything else. If you are a Punjab Kings fan, very low likelihood you're going to watch that game again because you know the result. If you're an RCB fan, high likelihood you'll watch it again and again and again. You know the result. But it's competing with everything else, including content on Netflix, including content on Prime, on other content on Jio Hotstar. That's why I think today the uniqueness of sport in its ability to capture audiences' attention at a given time is extremely unique. What you are talking about in terms of forms of monetization, that's really, I think, just in terms of how do you find new ways of monetizing. Direct to consumer subscription, honestly, on digital wasn't a way of monetization till recently. So we started sachet pricing to be able to get people into and consume and upgrade them and stuff like that. That wasn't a form of monetization. The e-commerce piece, whether it's something, that's another form of monetization of that content. The core remains the same, that the sport draws the audience at a specific time and keeps them engaged.
So let me rephrase this. Has the cricket industry managed to find a solution to monetize non-live sport the way, or has the entire focus been on cashing in on live cricket?
I personally think
I'll give you an example.
Go.
If I watch a test match on Sky,
Right.
I know that I'm in for a fantastic time all day. Like, even if it's raining, the match is at the Oval or at the Lords in London, it's raining, doesn't matter. I know Sky is going to take care of me for the whole day.
Right.
The Masterclass or Nazir Hussain, Michael Atherton out there, Do you think in India we still haven't really understood how to kind of engage with non-live sport?
I don't think it's a India-only issue. It's a global issue. I think that, as I said earlier, right, non-live, you're competing with everything else. So, yes, an avid fan like you will stay. But most other people, even if they want to watch Test cricket, will switch to something else. They'll switch to the news, they'll switch to some show, they'll switch to... So I think about it, right? When the game is live, everyone who's an avid fan of a Test match is definitely going to watch it if they are on that screen. When the game is non-live, irrespective of how good that non-live content, there's going to be a few people who say, I'll watch something else. So I think that competition globally on non-live content exists, but as you said, some people do a much better job with non-live content than others. I think it's a lot about how do you creatively express, how do you tell stories, how do you bind things together. It's storytelling, right? But you're competing with everything else.
In all these years, would you still say that to catch a fan's attention, storytelling is everything?
Oh, absolutely. Storytelling I think the essence of sport is the story. It's because the story is not written. It's essentially why you sit down and, again, I'm a big Man U fan, right? Like last season, I knew every game we're going to lose. But every game I still sat down and said, today something is going to change, right? And it's that which keeps you going. So that story being written in front of your eyes, and then there's one game which happened, like the game where we came back from 4-2 to win 5-4, and just that recorded doesn't make the fact that it's live. That storytelling is like the most important thing, and that's, I think, the beauty of sport is that it's unscripted, right? But the story is being written in front of your eyes.
There are two kinds of cricket fans.
Yeah.
ones who genuinely believe that IPL is everything and then they won't miss a ball. And then there are others who think that if IPL is the only thing that is destroying cricket, whatever, right? Now, this is again the fan war. But if you're part of the industry, then more likely that you're probably catering to kind of both sides of the fence, right? And in that, what do you make of this growing spout of T20 leagues? What do you make of the numbers that are coming up and vis-a-vis the traditional form of the game? Have you seen a shift in the fandom? What do the numbers tell you?
It's less about the competitions and more about the format. Honestly, I think that today with younger audiences, the format of T20 is just resonates significantly with them, and unfortunately that is to the detriment of the longer formats, because when you're used to action every single ball, every single minute, not having action, like Test cricket is all about perseverance, right? It's about seeing off the new ball. It's about someone's it's about setting up a batsman to get a wicket. It takes it's this entire thing which builds up. The way content is consumed in today's world, it's not, people don't have the attention anymore. So I think it's a format issue where T20s itself resonates with consumers. So I don't know. So even like a great T20 series between West Indies and England or Ireland and Bangladesh, we get very good viewership. But a great test match between these two countries, unfortunately, doesn't connect with them. People will still follow it in the fringes, especially younger audiences.
How important do you think is recall value in sport? Recall. You watch a game and then, a week later, 10 days later, a month later, 6 months later, it stays back, it lingers in your memory. When you watched a great test match between India and Australia, you remember what you saw 5 years ago, you remember what you saw 10 years ago. We remember, even though those were massive defeats, we remember India's tour of Australia 1999, right? What happened and the misery that we suffered. You think one of the problems with modern day sport from a fan's perspective is that there is no recall value to the games. By the time half the season of IPL is over, if you ask me, tell me what happened in the Delhi versus Rajasthan match, there's no chance I'm knowing it.
Yeah.
So recall value, you think, is one of the missing aspects?
Again, I don't think it's a cricket issue, it's a content issue. I mean, think about the last great single episode in a show you saw. I mean, it's tough to remember when you're watching so much, right? It's tough to remember when, like today, like you open your phone and you just you get bombarded with 5 things which you see and then you get lost in. You're not going to remember that 10 seconds later. So I just think that consumption of content is so fragmented now, and there's so much of your senses are just being bombarded with so many different things that it's difficult to build those seminal moments. They still come. A seminal moment, like all of us remember when India won their the T20 World Cup in the Caribbean. Like there's still seminal moments still there, but I think much less.
Talking about seminal moments off the field, one that I witnessed was in 2018. Again, I keep going back to the broadcast bit, but I would love to know more from you. In 2018, when Facebook made a 3,900 crore bid to buy the digital rights of the IPL, what was the first thought that came to your mind?
The key thing at that point of time was, I don't think people were willing to make upfront investments in digital for content. Don't forget that 7 or 8 years earlier, the Times Internet paid a significant, I mean not as much as this, but paid a solid amount for the IPL rights, but nowhere close to television. It was the first time a company came forward and said, hey, we are going to invest in this and we're going to build it up. And to be fair, Star at that time put a joint bid which matched that plus television. And they were very successful with it. So I just think that it was the first time a digital only player made a significant, which was very, very interesting.
There were 3 bids actually. 3,900 was Facebook, 3,300 was Airtel.
No.
And 3,100 was Jio, Reliance at that point.
Yeah, so there wasn't like outlandish in that. I mean, they were not far
So do you think that those were years when people were warming up to the tech idea? And I'll tell you why I'm asking is because when Facebook made the 3,900 crore bid, and I kind of tried to read stuff around it, and I remember one of the pieces that I was reading was who said that Rupert Murdoch, kind of he quoted sources saying that Rupert Murdoch, when he saw the monies that were being bid on digital, he said, if this is where I think things are going, then I probably need to take some calls now. At that point, when he saw the Facebook bid. But from there on, and this was 2018, and we are like 7 years down the line from that day, do you think sport in India has made enough tech advances or enough experiments, kind of to try and see where and I'm not talking about broadcasters, I'm talking about federations, to try and see how they can innovate and what they can do to make a sport or make, the following of a sport technologically seem better. And I'll just to add to this, like the pace at which technology is growing, and I keep seeing stuff that's happening in NBA. For example, I mean, one of the matches that was shown to me was like, the fan can superimpose himself on the screen and run around with LeBron James, right? I mean, so this is like, in terms of fan engagement, do you think India and Indian sports industry has been thinking enough?
Technology is a facilitator, right? Technology essentially, like what you're talking about, whether it's fan engagement or whether it's in athletes training or whether it's in just basic education around sports. So technology enables a lot more. And in terms of the viewing experience, there's tons of stuff that can be done. I don't think it's fair to say that a sports federation should be doing it, because I think a sports federations, eventually their job is to run the sport, right? The NBA is not a sports federation. NBA is a league which is owned by 30 teams, right? And if you think about it, like, I think there are 30 billionaires who own the NBA, right? I mean, or billionaires or richer. So it's just like, it's a private organization, it's different. So while they do a lot for basketball and growth of basketball, USA Basketball is a federation in the US. So I think it's tough for a federation to be able to say, I'm going to be up in technology. I think what a federation can do is be very open to trying stuff out.
I have a more pointed question in this regard. So when we watch cricket in India, we know that IPL is going to happen in the summers, and we know that dew is a problem, right? And dew has been such a problem, especially when those matches were starting at 8 o'clock. Right. One team was getting severely affected because of the dew factor. Now, I have had these conversations with people in the BCCI also, where I said, like, why don't we make an effort to kind of get a few tech companies to come in, kind of make a pitch in terms of, what can be done in this regard. And is there a future hope that can be done scientifically, technologically, can be countered dew? I'm saying that purely from an experiment standpoint is what I mean.
There's tons of technology, which is, as you said, right? Technology can help solve a lot of these problems. I think everyone's got to choose, right? Priorities. Like, you got to figure out what you want to prioritize. Is dew the main thing? Is the quality of pitch? Is drainage, right? It's such an important thing, right? In a sense where you're able to. So I think that technology can really help enable a lot of solving a lot of these problems. And yeah, I think that there are lots of, the good thing about this country also is there are lots of bright minds, not in sport, who I know would love to try and help sports problems, right? And so I think, as you said, I think it's about creating the right environment and saying, hey, why don't you guys come and do it for whatever the problem is. But it's the federation, it's the ecosystem, as you said, the ecosystem has to help solve these problems. And the federation has to help facilitate the ecosystem to solve.
I remember a conversation with you some time ago, this is more than a year ago, where we were talking about the importance of addressable TV.
Right.
And now it is upon us. And in today's day and age, from a fan standpoint, do you think we've reached a stage where it's the one single most important thing that needs to be kind of looked more into?
You're talking about the addressability of the viewer.
Addressability of the viewer.
Yeah, so I actually think that for me, this has been a pet peeve for years, right? I'll give you a silly example. The sampling of how audiences are measured on television is up and down, right? I think 15 years ago when Neo used to show the US PGA, the meter at that time said that there were 11 million people watching golf, which is, there's no chance, right? So I actually think that, to your point, the ability to address and the ability to authenticate specific viewers is really important for everyone in the ecosystem. It's important for the federation to understand, hey, these are my actual fans. Maybe more than they want, maybe less, but there's a reality check. Forget what you do in PR and marketing. There's a reality check to understand these are my fans. It's important for advertisers to understand who are you targeting. It's important for team owners. It's important for everyone. I think being able to get factual data, being able to get data where everyone is on the same page and saying, hey, this is authentic, I think that's really important for sports. So digital gives you that level of addressability, right? I mean, it's a viewer, and all those platforms have authenticated viewers because of requirements. So we know every single viewer who comes on, and we take the fact that we have to keep their information private and very, very seriously. But you can authenticate, you can address those viewers one at a time, each individually, and that gives you a good understanding also, even for a business. How do you show them the next property that they should like? How do you remarket to them? It helps us a lot in that.
Awesome. And to end this conversation, what do you think is the latest in sport? Anything that you think is happening around, which you've noticed, which you've got, and which you think is something that people haven't noticed yet? It's around the corner. Anything, any trend?
So I don't think it's people haven't noticed, but I think like we talked about, I think 2 or 3 key trends, right? I think we talked about technology enabling to solve problems in sport, right? Whether it's something as simple as drying an outfield to, how do you recover better from a hamstring injury, to how do you make sure your free kicks are in a better position. So I think that is actually going to, with what's now ubiquitous AI, right? That's actually going to go like, that's going to accelerate 10x. You're going to be able to solve those problems much, much faster. Creation of new content, creation of personalization. AI is really, really going to help drive fan experiences and fan engagement. We're doing a lot of stuff with it already. We talk about one of the challenges that we have, for example, in commentary, is that we would love to have every single one of our games have multilingual commentary to address every single person in this country. But we're doing sometimes 120 live games at the same time across 10 sports. It's just not possible. But we're doing experiments around AI where you can actually have real-time translation of English into multiple and have, so it'll help fan engagement a lot. Think about it, right? If you are able to show a MotoGP race with 7 different languages, it's such a technical sport. Someone in Tamil Nadu whose first language is Tamil will understand it so much easier and get more engaged in it. So I think that's one thing which will really help, AI enabling technology to solve sports problems, and especially fan engagement problems better.
And also the lingo. I was talking to someone and I said, can you talk about the IPL game in a way where my 10-year-old can understand?
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Make it relevant to individuals, right? And that goes back to being addressable. If I know who I'm talking to, I can customize my product for you. If I don't know who you are, then I'm just putting out something. So that comes back to the addressable. And I think the other 2 things that I'm really, we're seeing, and that's not even long term, it's in the short term. One is a lot of sport outside cricket. Football, motorsport, there's just a lot of inherent fandom coming into it. Despite the fact that the nationalistic, as you said, right, the nationalistic thing isn't really pushing it. There's lots of fandom. A lot of people are genuinely passionate about this global sports. And the last, I would say, women's sport. It's come so far in the last 4 years. This is anecdotal, but 4 years ago, we had a partnership with Cricket West Indies. And there was an India women's team going into the West Indies for a tour, and they were not producing it. They were not producing, and we actually, like literally, because we had a partnership there, in 2 days we were able to arrange production and showed it in India. Now look at where women's cricket is, right? WPL. I think that's going to happen in women's football. That's going to happen in motorsport. That's going to happen in golf. And remember what we spoke about earlier, that participation is what breeds consumption in future. Young girls are only going to start participating in these sports when they can identify with icons, right? So A young girl growing up is not going to start playing basketball because LeBron James, they're a star, but they will if Brittany Griner or Caitlin Clark.
Right.
Similarly in India, right, for cricket, it's tough to get a young girl to pick up a bat because of Virat Kohli, but it's easier if it's Smriti Mandhana, Jemima Rodriguez, someone. So that is going to, I think, fuel the next 20 years of participation where more young girls are going to start playing sport, which means 20 years from now, more young girls are going to start watching sport, which is great for the sports.
As you said, game of patience.
Absolutely.
And as usual, talking to you is always a pleasure, Yannick. Thank you
Awesome.
so much for your time.
Thank you, Avid, man.